Hi everyone, this is the second podcast from Chakrascension TM. It's a follow-on from the subject of the first podcast, which is all about fear. In this podcast, I'll be looking at the ego personality structure, how it is formed, its function in our everyday life, and how it can be aligned with our higher spiritual self. First of all, I need to say how I interpret the terms ego and personality. To me, ego is a way we define ourselves, a sense of me as opposed to that which is not me. Personality is a pattern of repeated responses to people and events in our life. Now, most of us spend our life trying to understand ourselves, which is why we often ask other people to give us feedback as to how they see us. Two common phrases we hear are, "You don't know the real me," or "This is the real me," as if we can all be defined by just one trait. One of the fundamental disputes about how our egos and personalities are formed is the nature versus nurture theory. Basically, are we born with a predisposition to act in a certain way, or is our upbringing the main contributing factor? Most child psychologists now believe it is a combination of the two. All children are born with a set of responses. Some children are very placid, whilst others are anxious and fretful. The anxiety can be the result of prenatal influences, or some children are naturally highly sensitive to physical stimuli. This heightened awareness and anxiety can result in the fear response, which I talked about in the first podcast, being highly exaggerated. So this is a nature element of the theory. We also have the basic survival instincts of requiring food and drink, a sense of safety, physical comfort, and, as we reach puberty, our sexual drive. The nurture element relates to the situation into which we are born and from which we derive our values. Now, the way we express those values is determined by our nature. Some people are angry and aggressive, and others easygoing and placid. The influences which form our values are manifold, but it is important to be aware of them, as sometimes we express beliefs and opinions which we believe are our own, but we have absorbed them from our environment without really thinking about them or analysing them. The first influence is the society we are born into. Underpinning the value of all societies is how they interpret the laws of the universe and the creator of that universe. Some believe the universe is controlled by a God with human emotions and judgments. That deity can be angry and vengeful, or loving and forgiving. But in both interpretations, it is a humanized interpretation of a divine being. And those societies then seek to enforce laws which will prevent its citizens offending that God. One of the most divisive issues in communities is the attitude towards sexual behaviour. The conflict between natural sexual urges and the attitudes of that society into which we are born can create huge conflict. These attitudes are usually influenced by the dominant religion of that society. So, the society we are born into gives us a framework and a context which affects our individual values and morality. How are we exposed to these values? The first major influence are our parents. Our parents' values have also been formed by the society they have been born into, but each household has a different interpretation of those values. And when we are children, our worldview is very much formed by our home environment. Our parents' worldview is very much affected by their socio-economic group, their education, and their spiritual beliefs. When we are young, we normally comply with our parents' opinions as we seek their love and approval. And often our life choices are influenced by our wish to please our parents, even if we are not consciously aware of that fact. Most important is how loved and safe we feel in our childhood, as a violent or abusive relationship with our parents can stunt our emotional growth and our capacity to develop relationships with other people. Even if we eventually reject our parents' values, our childhood is the most important factor in the development of our worldview. The next influence are our peers and teachers. During our early years, we naturally gravitate towards people who reinforce our worldview. During our teenage years, we are desperate to belong to a group so that we do not feel isolated and vulnerable. This can result in us becoming very tribal in our mentality, and we can then feel threatened by any group that has different views to us and the group we have allied ourselves with. Teachers can have an enormous influence upon us, not just by feeding us information, but by encouraging us to think and analyse so that we're not at the mercy of our emotions. Finally, we have a recent addition to these influences: social media platforms. Although the internet has been a huge force for good, it has been the medium by which the most extreme ideologies and conspiracy theories have been spread. As already stated, we all want to belong to a group or tribe of like-minded people. The problem with the internet is that we end up having our ideas reinforced, and we avoid those who challenge us and our beliefs. These podcasts are aimed at helping those who wish to progress on their spiritual path. Now, when we look at the lives of the great spiritual figures from the past, such as Jesus, Buddha, Kuan Yin, etc., the qualities that we see in them that we wish to emulate is their capacity for love, compassion, and forgiveness. Before we can aspire to those qualities, we have to recognize opinions which we hold, which display prejudice, anger, and intolerance. We also have to identify the origins of those opinions. Sometimes people express the most extreme opinions filled with anger and hate, but justify them with arguments which they feel are totally logical. And what most often feeds these opinions are the factors I have already identified: the cultural background, parental influence, peer pressure, and social media. So, how do we progress and live a life of positivity without anger and fear? Let's look at the chakra system. Each chakra is linked to a different aspect of the human condition. The driving forces behind most of our lives are the lower three chakras. The base chakra drives us to ensure we are secure in our lives and have the basic survival requirements: food, shelter, and physical safety. The sacral chakra is the center of our sexual drive. This chakra is hugely influential, as most people wish to feel sexually attractive, and if this is undermined, it is a blow to our self-worth. If you look at most advertising campaigns, they try to persuade us that if we act in a certain way and buy specific products, we will be more sexually desirable and therefore successful. This also relates to the social media platforms, many of which encourage us to ask others to say how they value us according to how attractive we look. Sexual desire is a great driver in our behaviour and how we interact with others, even if at an unconscious level. It also provides energy and drive in our creative activities. Finally, we have the solar plexus chakra, which gives us our emotional responses and our sense of self. In everything that we do, we are looking for emotional satisfaction and approval, validation for who we are as people. Even scientists who we perceive to be motivated by logic are driven by the sense of achievement they gain from a new discovery. Our emotional centre is the main driver in our life. If this centre is out of balance, it can result in someone who feels the need to dominate every situation, or one who is socially awkward and shy. In both cases, they make everything about themselves. This chakra, along with our base and sacral chakra, puts our own needs at the centre of our lives. I am not advocating suppression of our feelings, for many early spiritual belief systems saw pleasure, especially physical and sexual, as sinful, and saw the only way to enlightenment was to deny those needs, or even to punish themselves for having those desires. Suppression of these powerful drives is damaging and can in fact lead to obsessive and self-loathing behaviour. This is particularly damaging in children if they are taught to blame themselves for these natural feelings. So, I am not advocating suppression. As human beings, we also have our intellectual capacity, which enables us to use language, logic, and abstract thought. Our three higher chakras are the throat, which deals with communication, the third eye, which deals with intuition and abstract thought, and the crown, which is connected to our spiritual life. And by that I mean the capacity of each person to connect to God, however you wish to define that term, and their ability to be guided by and express the information brought through from that connection. That spiritual connection broadens our perspective on life so that we can see how our opinions and behaviour can impact on other people. We look for resolutions and compromise when solving problems and do not only seek to impose our ideas on others. We see the bigger picture. The problem when the higher chakras are influenced by the lower chakras is that concepts and information brought down from higher spiritual planes can be corrupted and misinterpreted by the person bringing through the information. As stated earlier, the most extreme views can be justified by what seems to be logical and academic arguments, or extreme and violent behaviour can be supported by what is presented as divine guidance. This is through that person's lack of awareness that they're being influenced by their lower chakras. One concept which is popular in contemporary spiritual teachings is that we should strive to achieve non-duality. This means that we lose all sense of ourselves as individuals, but merge with the universal consciousness permanently. We would have no individual needs or desires. I'm sure that many of you felt that state of being when meditating, when you become just a simple point of awareness with no sense of self. But it will be very difficult to maintain that indefinitely, as every preference we express reinforces our personality, whether it is what clothes we wear, music we like, or activities we enjoy. Functioning in the world would be almost impossible if we had no personality. So some people feel that the conflict between the drives of the lower three chakras, dominated by physical desire, and the spiritual yearning of the upper three chakras for a state of permanent bliss is impossible to solve. The answer, I believe, is the heart chakra. The first symbol in the Chakrascension TM system which came through when I started to receive the symbols from the Ascended Masters was the one linked to the heart chakra. This chakra is a gateway between the lower and higher chakras. I think that this chakra and its connection to love, both personal and impersonal, is the key to spiritual progression. This center works with energy which wants harmony, integration and togetherness. We should work to integrate our lower chakras with our heart chakra so that our interaction with others is driven by a desire for understanding, compassion and connectivity. It also allows the upper chakras to connect with the heart chakra when bringing through information from higher spiritual realms. This means that the interpretation of that information is not distorted by the lower chakras and their prejudices and limitations. This focus on our heart chakra shifts the focus from the solar plexus. This will help to integrate all aspects of our lives so that everything that we do will bring positivity and harmony into the world. How do we work on opening our heart chakra? Firstly, monitor your thoughts. When you have negative thoughts about anyone or any situation, ask yourself, what is the origin of that negative judgment? Is it a knee-jerk reaction from childhood programming, cultural prejudice, or the fact that your own opinions are being contradicted? Try to see the bigger picture and seek to understand what has influenced the other person's point of view. Regular meditation is essential, as by stilling your emotions it will allow you to analyse situations from a more impersonal perspective and access higher spiritual truths. I use Chakrascension on a daily basis to facilitate connection to the Ascended Masters and to bring my chakra system into balance. This has transformed my life. I feel more balanced and at peace within myself, and I'm less likely to become angry and frustrated when I hear ideas which are totally at odds with my own beliefs. Whatever technique you have trained in, you will only benefit by regular use and practice. No system or technique can transform you instantly into someone who is in a permanent state of bliss and happiness. You must choose to apply yourself and not become disillusioned when you don't seem to be making spiritual progress. To sum up, strive to analyse yourself without being negative, as this can lead to self-hatred. Monitor your reactions to others and identify the triggers that make you angry. Work towards integrating the contradictory and conflicting aspects of your personality by connecting to your heart chakra and expanding your capacity for love and compassion. This is the way to progress on your spiritual pathway.